This is the DLR Cast, the essential podcast for fans of Diamond David Lee Roth. Hey Darren, what's happening? Good to see you again. We are once again back ostensibly live on the DLR Cast. Good to see you, my friend. Good to hear you.
Likewise, live to tape, right?
Live to tape. And as usual, I get a little introspective for our podcast here, thinking about a bunch of different things. And I realized very recently, I know I ain't lucky in nothing. And that's a constant unemployment line, my friend.
Is that on A Little Ain't Enough?
Oh, you are good. Yes, indeed, man. From A Little Luck.
Yeah, there's certain eras of David Lee Roth lyrics that you're like, oh, he's talking about luck. Okay, that's going to be A Little Ain't Enough. Okay, he's talking about this. That's going to be Eat 'Em and Smile. He's weird. Okay, that's going to be this album. That's what I find. Yeah,
this album, I'll tell you, with the lyrics, some of them are a little perhaps a little autobiographical. I love some of the lyrics on this album. I mean, Everybody's Got the Monkey, and then Big Train, which has got one of my all-time favorite Dave lyrics, actually. Going back to this one with A Little Luck, it follows. I mean, is this autobiographical? I don't know. You tell me. I know I ain't lucky in nothing. Well, that's a constant employment line. And I know I ain't lucky in loving. I spent a year there last night. I mean, come on.
I would say he actually is very lucky because he was born into a very good family that Van Halen could rehearse in, and therefore he owned the PA that brought him into Van Halen. That aside, he did work very hard once he had that luck.
Yeah, we talk about this track a lot because he played it when he was out on the road when he was doing Las Vegas last year before the pandemic, the song Big Train from that same album. And it's got one of my favorite lyrics, at least on the lyric sheet, that he doesn't quite spit out. And he goes, I know fast living, I know wine, women, and songs become a long locomotive for me. That train be rolling, not me. I'm going before, this is the best part, I'm going before wine and women turn into beer, the old lady, and TV. First time I heard that, I was trying to read along with it, and he couldn't quite, because that's a really fast up-tempo song, right? And the lyrics are just spitting out. But to me, man, that is modern-day poetry right there. Are you kidding me?
That's not too far off from his quote about the perfect woman turning into a pizza at 4 a.m. Isn't that a thing in his autobiography? That, the perfect woman does this, and this, and then turns into a pizza at 4 in the morning.
But I absolutely love that. I mean, the ideal, the dream is fast living, wine, women, and songs, right? And then, ultimately, what's it going to turn into? The beer, old lady, and TV. So what do you want to avoid?
It's like he always said, Sammy Hagar likes to party. I am the party.
Exactly. So not much new on the David Lee Roth news front. He did have there was a cool picture most recently of his Facebook post of a shot of him with what looks like his dancing shoes. His most recent image up there, he put up there that was basically like, it said something about, got the vaccination at CVS, we'll see you soon. Now, to which, more to come or something like this, but to which the idea that David Lee Roth walked into his local CVS in Pasadena just makes me go, what?
Sometimes you don't know if he's kidding or not with stuff. There's such a drought of news, but in taping, 4 to 8 interviews a week lately, I do what I can to bring up Roth, and I was able to bring him up to Joey Allen from Warrant because they were on some dates on the Little Ain't Enough European tour, but they had to bail off of it because Janie Lane got hurt in the middle of the tour and had problems. And I think after 4 or 5 shows, they bailed. But that's what I'm trying to bring into the world of, hey, can I pump all these people for Dave anecdotes? And usually it's pretty successful. It seems like everyone met him at some point. I forgot to do it with Bill from Firehouse today. But
Bill Leverty.
Yeah, exactly. The amazingly nice and talented Bill Leverty. And if we tape a part 2, it'll go on this podcast and there'll be some Roth questions.
They really are about the nicest guys in the world. I dealt with them many, many years ago back on their first album, just the coolest guys. But I'll tell you, well, we know this. When there is new David Lee Roth news, we'll at least try to break it here first, or maybe third, but at least talk about it the most and have the best amount of laughs. And certainly the people that you get, that you and I interview, or you interview solo, I mean, there's such a willingness to talk about this guy. It's amazing how many people he's influenced. That's part of the reason for this podcast. But everybody, you're right. Everybody's got a cool, fun story about where they were, how they're influenced. And that, my friends, here comes Steve's great segue, leads to today's awesome interview with Sammy from Red Rain. Sammy Lee, I'm spacing on his last name for a quick second here, but Sammy Lee of all names, right? From the awesome Virginia band Red Rain. And most immediately, because I have been digging this now for 3 or 4 days, these guys are really cool melodic hard rockers. They just put a song called Not That Way on YouTube a few days ago. And man, I can't get this song out of my head. If you like melodic rock, big guitars, huge drums, I don't know too much about their backstory, but I'm telling you, it sounds like they went into a studio and with a big producer. I mean, this song is awesome. There's a lyric video out there. I can't sing this song's praises enough, but
I'm going to give Sammy Lee 3 hooks to any listener who goes, I don't know who he is. I don't know Red Rain. First thing is, good guy in a great band. Sure. Second hook, Red Rain has played and toured with a lot of bands that toured with David Lee Roth and or Van Halen at some point in their career. And the third thing is he knows a lot more about David Lee Roth and Van Halen than I do. And that says a lot.
He really knows the stuff. It's a great interview to listen to. It's really cool. I'm kicking myself. I wish I was there. He was a super cool guy. He knows his stuff from back in Eat 'Em and Smile. He'll go deep with you on A Little Ain't Enough. He knows his stuff. And of course, he knows David Van Halen too. But he's one of those guys like us that can wax endlessly about Dave's solo stuff. I really enjoyed the conversation you had with him.
Thank you. When you get pitched interviews like I do, a lot of the publicists and the representatives of ours, to pull the curtain back a little bit, are a little desperate to get their artist placed. And they go, hey, he'll talk about anything. And then you'll go, well, is he a David Lee Roth or a Van Halen fan? And they go, oh, huge. And half the time that people have done that to me, we haven't been able to use the interviews because they'll go, I love Van Halen. Cool. What's your favorite song? Jump. And you go, okay. So you ever see Van Halen live? No, but I hope to one day. Well, they're not touring. And that happens. And then when you talk to somebody like Sammy, you quickly realize, oh, he's been there this whole ride. He's not just the musician who can play all the songs. He has all the albums. He has all the bootlegs.
Got to give these guys props. I mean, and Sammy, it's a fun interview, but let's make sure we give plenty of props to Red Rain themselves. They just put out an album back in February called Red Rain. And you mentioned that they toured everybody. They have opened for Tesla, Dokken, Jackal, Lita Ford, a bunch of hard rock folks that have been around. They're from Richmond, Virginia. And I'm telling you, these guys, they really should be huge. I mean, big guitar riffs. It's fun, sort of 80s, sounding, but it's not a throwback. It nods a bit to those big choruses, big, melodic rock bands that I love so much. I bet these guys kill live opening for bands like that. I really would like to see them if they ever make it to the Midwest.
Yeah, there's always a chance that they will. They're, getting bigger by the week. I recommend them. This isn't just one of those GGBB principles, the good guys, bad band scenarios. No, good guys, good band, GGGB. So pleasure speaking with him. We could have spoken another 90 minutes. Maybe we have to do a part 2 where you ask him to pick all of his favorite songs from the different albums, whatever it is.
I'll tell you what, you and I talk about this. You know what we should do? Get him to do a part 2, and we do your 5 most underrated David Lee tracks, because he went straight into talking about the DLR Band, and a lot of folks don't know that record. And I would love to do a deep dive into that record, because when you think of it, that record came out at a really weird time. He didn't tour for it. It was very quick. You and him bring up you surprised him with an anecdote that I won't give away here about the recording of the album that I did not know, and John 5. So let's put a pin in it, make a note, put on a Post-it note, write it down, do something with it, get him back. I want to talk to him, and we'll do your 5. I just have it in my head. It could be anything, but underrated Dave tracks. So maybe we just do a deep dive into the DLR Band album. I don't know.
Yeah. Whatever it is, that sounds great. So thanks to everyone for listening to this one, as always.
Yeah, and here is Sammy from Red Rain. Enjoy.
Leading into it here, thank you for doing this for the DLR Cast. But when you speak to somebody named Sammy Lee, is that just irony when you add together Sammy Hagar and David Lee Roth? I mean, your real name is Sam, right?
My real name is Sam. Lee came from David Lee.
Really? Oh, so that is the case.
Yep. So it's a mixture of David Lee Roth, obviously, and it's a mixture of Tommy Lee, because Tommy's a drummer. So when I was younger and we formed this band, I mean, I'm talking years ago, this high school band I was in, we were kind of making up fake names, and I just went with Sammy Lee, and I used so my real name is Bendhiem, so I used Sammy Lee Bender. and then when I was in college, I was in a fraternity, and everybody would call me the Rocker, because I played a lot around in our so then it went from Sammy Lee Bender to Sammy Lee Rocker, which was funny. And I was like, well, that's cheesier than just Sammy Lee. So I was like, I'll just call myself Sammy Lee.
That works. Well, there's no doubt that you guys are Van Halen fans. Obviously, Bubba doing Eruption on, I believe that's on your Facebook.
Was. That was the night Eddie passed. We had band practice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, in terms of fans of Van Halen, everyone loves Van Halen if they know who Van Halen is. You never know, because of Billie Eilish, if people don't know who Van Halen is, you never know.
Right.
But in terms of David Lee Roth fans, I find that there's kind of three sweeping generalization kind of categories. There's the first one that goes, yeah, I love David Lee Roth. And you go, oh, what's your favorite Roth song? And they go, Just a Jiggle.
Yeah, sure.
and then the next one will go, yeah, I loved Eat 'Em and Smile and Skyscraper, and then he lost me. And then the next one goes, oh, I love She's My Machine, and I see him on every tour. Which one are you kind of?
I am David Lee Roth, Van Halen Roth. So, it's funny. I've been doing interviews, obviously, about my band, and one thing that everybody always asks me is, when I guess they'll do their homework or they ask me. I mean, I'm a monster Van Halen fan.
Yeah.
And I'll back up by saying, look, obviously I don't know Sammy. I love Sammy and some of the things that he did, like Montrose obviously was such a great band. But there's only one Van Halen. That's just me. And it's David Lee Roth. Outside of that, since we're going to go down that route, is we all know that if you're what I call a purist Van Halen fan, there's no greater album than Van Halen 1. We know this. So when you ask me what my favorite song is, I take that out of the equation, because they're all great songs, and that's the mountain, that's the king. But my favorite album is Women and Children First, and my favorite song is In a Simple Rhyme.
Wow, you and Chuck Klosterman both are In a Simple Rhyme people. That I knew that because that Time Life magazine special Van Halen issue that came out, I guess a month or two ago, his number one song was In a Simple Rhyme. Yet, have you once heard that song ever on the radio?
No, which is crazy. And you know what? What's really fascinating about that song is when they went on tour, was it, now my timeline's always good. I can't remember if it was the 2007 or the 2012 one, but they played, I think it was the second tour, not the reunion tour, the first one. I think it was a different kind, but they played In a Simple Rhyme live. And that was the first time they did that since 79.
I didn't realize.
Not 79, excuse me. Women and Children came out in 80. But since Women and Children First came out.
The fact that you just corrected yourself on an album release year itself is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not, I'm thinking too fast. But that is what's so great about that song, in my opinion, is first of all, the melody is great. David Lee Roth, in my opinion, one of the best songs he sang on. And the guitar solo is just awesome. And look, I'm a drummer, but I think it's probably one of Eddie's at least top 5, top 8 guitar solos that he did.
That's a lot coming from him.
Yeah. I mean, that's obviously, I have to say that's my opinion, and that's personally my opinion. But it's just a great song from beginning, because it starts obviously, a little melody, a little melodic, and then it gets heavy. Sure. Then it breaks down. Then it's got the breakdown where it slows down again, and there's just like a nice little piece there before it just revs right back up. It's a great song, really is, which comes off a great album.
Well, the small world nature of it all is that your band, Red Rain, has played with a lot of bands that actually toured with Van Halen. Dokken was on the Monsters of Rock tour. Tesla, well, they were on the Eat and Smile tour, I believe.
I don't know if they were or they weren't. I mean, when I saw the Eat 'em and Smile tour, it was Cinderella. So I don't know if it was that or Skyscraper. See, no, I never saw Tesla with David Lee Roth, so I don't know. I don't know which one it was.
But did.
Yeah, they were.
Eat 'em and Smile tour. Okay. Do you remember the show, or is it was a foggy night?
Absolutely remember it. And I'll tell you the funny part too is the first show he ever kicked off for Eat 'em and Smile was in Hampton, Virginia.
Wow. Was that the Hampton Coliseum, the one that Fish does all the stuff at? Okay.
Yep. And I was there. It was great.
Now, did you go because you were just such a big Van Halen fan, or you just went to a lot of shows in general?
So, no, I went, I think, it's funny being in a band and Red Rain's on a different plane than sort of the other bands I was in, but I went to see bands that I wanted to see. I didn't just go to a show to go to a show. Well, for the most part, sometimes I did, but very rare. But no, when Van Halen split, I went with David Lee Roth. So I followed everything that he's done.
So the DLR Band album, you were still following at that point?
Yep. I followed him. I have followed him up into every album he put out.
Now, you would get 10 different answers if you spoke to 10 different people. But do you have a favorite drummer of all of Dave's drummers?
Wow.
I thought the obvious answer was Bissonette, but
it is. It really is. But the problem is Ray Luzier is just such a badass, Yeah. And I met Ray Luzier, and what a great guy he was. But probably Bissonette if I had to pick between the two. But man, that is a close call right there. But it's those two drummers. But yeah, probably Greg Bissonette. I loved his drumming style as well.
Did you get to see Dave a lot over the years besides the Eat 'em and Smile tour?
Yes, I've seen Dave way more times than Van Halen. And got a lot of good stories about some Dave shows too. So
I would love to hear that, to say the least. Now, I've always been trying to piece together everything because I'm a little younger than the average David Lee Roth kind of diehard. So the 86 and 88 album tours were full on arenas.
Right.
The 91 tour and A Little Ain't Enough. I don't find that you really see much footage of that. I can't tell if he was still in arenas on that tour or
he was.
Okay. So did you see any of the A Little Ain't Enough touring?
I did.
Wow. I did. So live, was he doing the surfboard or the microphone kind of stuff?
He did the surfboard. He did the boxing ring. You remember the boxing ring?
I thought the boxing ring was on the Skyscraper tour as well.
It was. Oh, you're talking about, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about all his solo stuff. You know what? That I don't know if I remember all the, it might have been the microphone. I don't remember.
See,
I'll be honest with you. Every Van Halen show I've been to.
Yeah.
In most of every Raw show I've been to, I was stone sober because I didn't want to. I want to remember everything. But as time went on, you had your first beer. You're like, well, that was pretty good. So, yeah. So I don't think I remember. I kind of want to say it with the microphone, but I don't hold me to that one.
Because the narrative that I seem to get is it was like a blank check. Let's make this show as big as possible on the Skyscraper tour because you had the boxing ring and the surfboard and the microphone. And, you had Brett Tuggle just having his own riser. And then it seems like maybe they cut the budget a little bit starting in 91. 94, we interviewed Ron Wixo on this podcast. He was the touring drummer, but he didn't play on the Your Filthy Little Myth album. And it sounds like it was down to full-on clubs, like the biggest club artist ever, or he would have been like the smallest theater artist ever.
Right. Right. And he never came around here after that. So, so I never saw those shows after that.
So I don't remember any touring in support of the DLR Band album, except this great concert from Finland that's on like MTV3 Finland or something like that.
Yeah. No, I saw that. Yeah, it's great. And by the way, so now if you want to get into a whole other realm, if we're going to go through the DLR albums, obviously, again, Eat 'Em and Smile, King of the Mountain.
Yeah.
After that, the DLR album is close first, in my opinion. That album it's a kick-ass album.
Yeah. Obviously, John 5 deserves a lot of credit for that because he played guitar and bass, supposedly all the guitar and bass in a day.
Really?
So the story kind of goes, I don't know if you ever heard this. John 5 told it on a podcast with Chris Jericho, which was that I think there was a problem with how they recorded it, that maybe it wasn't synced with the click track. And John 5 had to be out and to the airport at a certain time for a Marilyn Manson tour.
I did hear this story. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And Dave said something like, "Are you my friend?" He's like, "Yeah, of course I'm your friend." "Well, then I need you to redo all the guitar and bass." And he did it all in a day.
You know what? I did hear that story. Yeah, that's crazy. I did hear that story, actually. That's nuts. That's just crazy to knock that out like that. But I mean, John 5 is awesome.
He's awesome. Exactly. Yeah. We hope to have him on here eventually. I've interviewed him before. And a weird thing about him is a lot of people just are very tight-lipped about their time with Dave. And he's not. He's just only has nice things to say, but he's not tight-lipped.
Yeah. There's not, I've read some articles with Billy Sheehan and Steve I. They've never said anything bad, but you're right. I mean, it's not, they'll say a couple of things about the shows and the tours, but there's really not a lot out there about it. But it's interesting. It really is. It's an interesting vibe, now being in the situation we've been in and meeting some of the bands that we've been playing with and talking to some people that kind of know them. I mean, from what I get from Dave it's just, I mean, he's a being, and sometimes good, sometimes bad. I don't know, but I don't know. It's a weird vibe when you talk to people.
I get the vibe that he's turned down most things rather than doing most things. He's been very selective, and then he moves on. He does something and then goes, "I did it. Let's move on to the next thing." Do you get that impression as well?
The impression I got really was through the late 80s and 90s on both ends of Van Halen and the Daily Roth. I mean, I just stumbled across, and let me interject this because I think this will answer the question. I had read this article before, but I stumbled across it again yesterday by accident. But it said, the caption was pretty much clickbait too, but it was like, "The time I asked David Lee Roth if he regretted leaving Van Halen." Have you heard that?
That one I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of clickbait in my day, but not that one.
Yeah, and so there's really no article. It's just the audio. And it's like, I don't remember, 4 minutes long. And at the very end, Dave is like, "So do you regret leaving Van Halen?" And, he's off in some tangent about, I don't know, in the Himalayas or whatever he's talking about. And then the very end, he's like, no, I don't regret my time, leaving Van Halen. I would personally, and again, don't know the people, I think that's probably his biggest regret of all. That the Van Halen situation went the way it did. And because I think they could have done even greater things. And to say that, I mean, I'd like to be fair. I mean, again, I'm a purist. I love David Roth, but what Sammy did stepping in, again, and in my opinion, two different bands. You got more of a really a dirtier, grittier band, which was the David Lee Roth band, Van Halen, and then you had more melodic sort of love things. So it's hard to compare those two bands, but you got to give Sammy a little credit to step into that role, because that was a big role to fill. But I think reading some of the things that I read, and you kind of read between the lines, I think Dave kind of regretted that. My opinion. Dave probably smacked me in the head if he was here now and told me I'm wrong, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, that's a really good point. I can't give the exact numbers, but I remember reading when you compare the Eat 'Em and Smile tour and the 5150 tour, it was something like Dave did 8 Van Halen songs a night, and Van Halen was only doing 2 or 3 Dave era songs. So in other words, he was still going like, I am Van Halen. And then you look at that 2002 tour when him and Sammy played together. Was it 02 or 03? I think it was 02.
It was 0102, I think.
Okay, yeah. So that
because and the reason I saw him in '99 up in Atlantic City. So yes, it was.
Oh, wait. So if you saw him in '99 in Atlantic City, so that was the same era as the Finland show, and that was the DLR Band album.
Oh, the DLR. Mm-hmm.
When you saw him in '99, rather than just going to setlist.fm, do you remember if it was mostly Van Halen and then like 2 songs in the DLR Band album and that was it, or if he went deep cuts?
I think it was. Again, this is going back. You got to remember, I was in Atlantic City, so that was a different mind. And I got a great story for that too.
Sure, please.
I got a lot of great stories. If I want to say it was probably, I may be wrong. So some Van Halen, David Ross fans like, oh, I'm an idiot. But I want to say it was probably 60-40, maybe DLR to Van Halen. But it was a lot of Van Halen. I mean, he's always played Van Halen. It's always been a Van Halen thing for him. Now, of course, when he did Eat 'Em and Smile and, Skyscraper, because those were so big and he had that material. But, I mean, come on, he still played Jump at the end. I mean, he still, and again, everything you read is he hated Jump because he hated the keyboards. But, damn, he finishes with Jump for the last 20 some odd years.
Yeah, he finished the Vegas shows that I saw in early 2020. Those finished with Jump. The Skyscraper tour, the videos I've seen, it finishes with Jump.
Yeah,
I guess that's just been the closer since 86 or something like that. But you said you had a good story about Atlantic City.
Well, I got stories everywhere, but the Atlantic City. So we live in Richmond, Virginia. So Red Rain's out of Richmond, Virginia. That's where we live. So I was in another band at the time. And the only significance of that is the singer of Red Rain, Bubba, was in that band as well. But we had formed that band with a good friend of mine that I grew up with. Anyway, my good friend and I, Joel, one of my close friends, John, and another really close friend of mine, Jeff, who is a big Van Halen fan too. We've gone to him and I are the ones that traveled every Van Halen show. All right, that's out of the way. So we drove up to Atlantic City. It was at Trump Marina.
Oh yeah.
We got shows. So if you've been to Trump Marina, you go in, and if you haven't, I'm going to kind of try to explain this so people can, I think you went up an elevator, and then as you got up to the elevator, you went right down this huge hallway. So, and if you've been at casino, there's shops and everything, and you're walking, and then right halfway in the middle was a bar. Okay. And the bar almost looked like the bar on Cheers. It was just this big square bar, probably had 15 rows, on whatever side. So we get there, and my buddy Joel was a musician, was in a pretty big punk band back in the day, and had moved to LA and was a musician. And he said, "Look, I know this guy Kieran, who's the sound guy. So I'm going to go see if Kieran can, what he can do for us later." So Joel goes his way. My buddy Jeff, who has the luck of the Irish, always finds his way backstage and goes, "Well, I'm going to go try this." My buddy John and I, we like to gamble too. So he's like, "I'm going to go check this out." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm going to go to the bar and get a drink." I had just bought this shirt, and I'm sure everybody's seen it. It's the Got Roth.
Yeah.
On the front, and on the back says David Lee Roth is Van Halen.
Yeah.
Okay. I just purchased that for this show. So I'm walking, and I heard something. So I turned my head like this. And as I turned back around to walk to the bar, this guy bowls me over, knocks me down. And I look up, and I'm like, I don't know if I can cuss or not. I'm sorry, but
yeah, please.
So
please.
I went, "Holy shit, Sebastian Bach." So I ran right into Sebastian Bach, ran me over. And he goes, "Hey man, I'm really sorry." He helps me up, and he looks and he goes, "That's a cool shirt, man." And I'm like, "Thanks. Yeah. Big Dave fan." He goes, "Yeah." I said, what are you playing tonight? He goes, "No, I'm going to see Dave." He sat 2 rows in front of us. Sebastian Bach did. So that's crazy, And we got a picture with him. I got a picture at home with Sebastian. So that's one of my stories at a David Lee Roth Van Halen story. But I just thought that was pretty cool. But we were close. We saw the show, but it was so funny because like Dave came out and everybody's standing, and you know I'm small. I'm 5'6.5", 5'7", and right in front of me, Sebastian goddamn Bach.
6'4". Yeah.
So. It was a great show, and then I went and so the show was over at midnight, and I gambled from midnight to 6 a.m.
Well, I applaud everything that you just said. Sebastian Bach, who I've never interviewed, is known to have great taste in bands, regardless of how you feel about some of the decisions he's made. He's a Kiss and Van Halen fanatic, and he recently had a feud with Stephen Pearcy of Rat, but he loves Rat, so
yeah.
On that.
He was a very nice guy. So we had that little exchange, and then he went to the bar. I actually had walked away, and then I came back to the bar, and he was sitting there. And the only spot, which is crazy, was so he had his back sort of like sideways, like talking to, I think, his wife or girlfriend.
Yeah.
I hope. You know. But the only place that I could get a drink was like, so I was standing behind his back, and he had turned around, and he goes, "I remember that shirt." And he had just put out Bring 'Em Bach Alive.
Yes, on Spitfire Records. Yes.
Right. And I just turned to him and said, "Hey, man, I didn't get a chance to tell you, but I love the new album." He's like, "Thanks, man." And he was, you know, you hear stories. You always hear stories about rock stars and movie stars. He couldn't have been any nicer, you know. And again, it wasn't like I talked to him for more than 2 or 3 minutes, but he was very gracious, very nice. But yeah, I've been reading stories about him and Jericho and and Pearcy, but and he's kind of gone off the political rails a little bit, but. Hey, man, that's his opinion, you know?
It happens, but not being political here. So I used to go to Atlantic City a lot as a kid because my parents were big gamblers, but like successful gamblers, like knowing how to get the money out of the slot machines. So then they keep going every month. Hey, do you want to come back? Room. So, you know, here I am 10 years old, 11, 12, 13. And they're like, "Hey, here's $20 in quarters. Go to the arcade. We're going to gamble." So I went a ton. And I remember Trump Marina used to be Trump Castle. I think that was one of the two casinos that was like off the boardwalk. That was like in the weird remote part of Atlantic City.
Yeah. So when you would come into the city, obviously, it was all the way to the left, all the way on the left.
To the
I don't think it was. You would know more, so don't. I never heard it called Trump Castle because when we went, it was brand new. So I don't know. So I don't know. That part I couldn't tell you.
What I'm getting at is if David Lee Roth in 1999 was playing an off boardwalk Atlantic City casino and not a Caesars, I don't think the Borgata was yet a big thing in '99. But if 1999 David Lee Roth was doing that, obviously he wasn't getting the great bookings, which would be back in 3 years. I think the Sammy tour did really big numbers. The story I heard from Sammy's old keyboard player Jesse Harms is that they did want to bring the tour to Asia and Europe and all that, and it was Sammy who said no, not Dave.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. You know, it's funny. And again, I think Dave is sort of an evil genius when it comes to that. I've read stories, I've heard stories, and I've actually heard Sammy even say it that you know, you saw the whole thing where they were fighting with each other. Both of them said that was more of a show than it was. I think I think I heard Sammy on Howard Stern said, "Look, I don't have a problem with the guy, you know, but I think there's probably a little bit of an ego thing, but." I think he said really there was only really one night where they really didn't get along, but you know, everything you read and again, I love David Lee Roth. But you know, I would have to assume he might sometimes not be the easiest guy to be with. You know, I don't know.
I only assume as much. I recently found, which eventually we'll post on this podcast, an interview that I taped with Dave in 2004, and he was. I only listened back to it like 2 weeks ago, and he was off the charts, a pleasure to talk with. I'm sure he could be nice to anybody for 20 minutes if he wants to be.
Well, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You know, I learned my lesson a long time ago. So, and I'll tell you this quick story, and it's not Van Halen related, but I told you about the old band I was in with my singer from Red Ring. We were lucky enough. We got a call. We didn't really do a lot out of Richmond, but we did some. And I got a call from a buddy who was promoting a venue here. And he says, hey, man, I got an opening. Would you like it? And I said, sure. And it was Quiet Riot.
Okay.
But it was the MTV Quiet Riot. So it was Kevin DeBrow, Rudy Sarzo, Carlos Cavazzo, and Frankie Benelli.
Yes.
So it was like, hell yeah. So we did the show, and we were told to be there at a certain time. We go there, and Rudy, they were sort of standing around. It was Rudy and Carlos Cavazzo. And they were in one little pack. We had walked in, and so Rudy just walked over. He goes, hey, y'all, the opening act. We say it couldn't have been any nicer. Rudy Sarzo, pleasure. Carlos Cavazzo came over, said hi. I never met Kevin DeBrow, but then Frankie Benelli came in, and Frankie was the biggest ass I ever met in my life. And he was such an ass and such a jerk that I never forgot it. And I'm a pretty easygoing guy. Well, fast forward to 2017 with Red Rain, and our management calls us and says, hey, I got a show for you with Quiet Riot. And I'm like, okay. You know what? I'm older now. If I meet Frankie, I don't like, and I'm carrying this whole grudge, right? So we travel to the venue. Their sound check was supposed to be at 4. We're getting reports that Frankie's plane is late. So everything's running late. Frankie shows up at 5:30. The doors open at 6 because they sold a package to meet the band. He goes and plays. He does his thing. And I'm sitting there going, man, that, I haven't forgotten 20 years ago.
Right.
So we play our show. They play theirs. And our publicist said, hey, go say hi to Frankie. And I'm like, well, I got to bite my tongue because, and he was the most gracious guy I ever met. He turned around. So my point, and he was so nice, and he had heard our set, and so my point being is, and I hear this, but you meet somebody for the first time, you're like, they're a jerk, but you don't know what they've been through. You don't know the kind of day they had. If there was ever a time Frankie could have been a jerk, his plane was 2.5 hours late. They really didn't get the sound check, and as a musician, and he didn't get to eat dinner. Everything had gone wrong, and he was the most gracious, the nicest. Was very personable, and so it really opened my eyes. Like, sometimes you meet your idols and your movie stars and your rock stars, and they're jerks, but you don't know what the day is. So I try to give everybody a chance now. So that story took a while, but that was just So people that I know. And I won't go to this much. My father has passed a long time ago, but my father was in the movie business. We used to own movie theaters and was sort of well known. And so I've gotten to meet certain people, and as time went on, I still meet people, and people who like, I met David Lee Roth, and you get, he's a great guy. Then you get, well, he's a little off-putting, and then you get, he's kind of a jerk, but you never know what day you caught him on. So I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt.
That's a fair assessment right there. So you mentioned seeing him in '99 in Atlantic City. So I assume that you saw the 2001, 2002 tour, the 2004, 2005 tour. You saw all those as well? Yep.
Got another great story there.
Oh, please. So you got the time, I got the ears.
I've got the time. I just don't want to bore you. But So I told you about so I'll go back to the 99. I told you about the 4 guys with my buddy Jeff, who has the luck of the Irish. He always, whatever.
Yeah.
So 6 months prior to the DLR Sammy tour, my buddy's out in LA, Jeff, calls me. He goes, dude, you're not going to believe this. I went out with some guy. He's in real estate. They had a big real estate thing out there. He goes, I think he went to the Rainbow. I don't hold me to that one. I can't remember. And he goes, you'll never guess who I ran into. And of course, I'm like, dude, you could have run anybody. He went to the bar and he started talking to this guy and ended up being Ray Lazier.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So he starts talking. Actually, this might have been 3 months. So I might be wrong. This might have been 3 months of the show. So they're talking. So he says, man, we're talking. And I'm telling him that me and himself, we're big Van Halen fans, and we're going to the show. And we're very excited. There's playing in Virginia Beach at the Virginia Beach Amphitheater and so on. And he says, Ray leans over and goes, would you like backstage passes? And he says, yeah. He goes, all right, well, here's Ray gives him his phone number, right? Says, okay, backstage passes. Well, I'm like, dude, there's no way he's getting, he probably fake name, fake number Jew, whatever. Time goes on, and I think he said call him a day before the show. Don't call him before then. I'm sure they were rehearsing. So my buddy Jeff calls him, no answer, leaves a message, said, hey, I don't know if you remember me. So, well, this goes on. So again, we're in Richmond. We're 2 hours away from Virginia Beach. So we're driving. He's making phone call. Ray doesn't call him back. I said, dude, I told that's too good to be true. So we go to the arena. We go to the Virginia Beach Amphitheater, and I'm with my, at the time, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and another buddy of ours. So 4 of us went to the show. And Jeff is just bummed out. He's like, I can't believe it. So Virginia Beach Amphitheater is really cool. You go in, and it's got the whole amphitheater part, but it's also got a bar, outdoor bar, like a sit-down outdoor bar. It's beautiful. I'm sure a lot of places do.
Is that the Jiffy Lube Live?
Yes, it's now Jiffy Lube Live. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's called Virginia Beach. So the whole time you're in there, all they're pushing is Sammy's tequila. Yeah. So we're sitting down there, we're drinking, and Jeff is just bummed. He goes, you know what? I'm going to try something. And he walks away. He goes to will call, and there's 2 tickets waiting for us. So didn't forget, right? So we're real excited. We're like, and again, we've been David Lee Roth fans for, since high school. And we're like, we're this close now. We've always said we were going to meet him. We're this close. So my wife and my friend go get in the seats. So I said, look, we're going to go back there and see if we can see Dave. So we go back there. Mm-hmm. Dave's nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
I took a picture and met Brian Green, his guitar player.
Oh, Brian Young. Yeah.
Yep. Brian Young. Excuse me. Brian Young.
Brian Green was on 90210, but hey,
yep. I'm sorry. Brian Young. You're right. I met Brian Young. That's when I met Ray Luzier out there.
Yeah.
And he had, and damn it, I can never remember his name. Who I ended up talking to for an hour after the show was
the bassist. James
Lomenzo. James Lomenzo. Lomenzo. Yeah. Nice guy. So we met all of them. Well, so like I said, my buddy Jeff, he doesn't care. So he goes, come on, we're going this way. I'm like, dude, I don't know if we're supposed to be back here. We walk in right when the whole crew's eating. And it's one of those things where like the door slams and every head looks at you. And we were like, oh shit. So I'm like, I'm not comfortable with this. So I walk out. Jeff walks in. He opens a door and walks right into Sammy Hagar while he's getting dressed. Right? Okay. Comes back. I'm at the scene. Comes back. Goes, you won't believe it. So anyway, the show goes on, and it was the night where Sammy played first. Mm-hmm. So Jeff's like, look, I'm going to go backstage now and see if I can see Dave. Dave was literally pulling up into a limo 10 minutes before he goes on stage, and they said he was out at the beach surfing. And so Jeff saw him get out and come in. So anyway, show goes. He's, Dave's killing it. We go backstage. We have our backstage passes, and they're not letting you in yet. Now, and again, this is hard to sort of visualize, but you kind of go around the venue, and then they got this long fence that runs to a wall. But so Jeff goes, come on. So we go down, and at the very end, there's an opening like this from the fence to the wall. So we slither through it. So we don't wait. And it comes around to where the parking lot is. We're walking. It's pitch black, but you can see that there's a deck back there where they're putting everybody that got backstage passes. We're walking by the tour buses. You can't see a thing. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I'm getting ready to take a step, and I feel a hand slap me on the chest and says, you can't be here. And I was like, no, I got a backstage pass. He goes, you can't be standing here. I literally looked down and was this far from stepping on David Lee Roth. He had taken a towel and laid in the parking lot after the show and was laying there like he was suntanning, but you couldn't see him. You couldn't see anything. The guy saw, so we almost stepped on him. And I just looked down and went, hey. He goes, hey. And the guy moved us, walked around, and that was it. That was as close. That's the second closest time I've been next to him, but never really said anything to him. And then he got on the tour bus and left. But I talked to James Lomenzo for about an hour. He was a great guy.
He's a really nice guy. He did his time in Megadeth and White Lion and really accomplished player. And I think he was there for like 4-5 5 years. Like he came in after I can't think of the blonde guy that was on that Finland show that I've mentioned 20 times already. But yeah, James seems like he was there from like 2001 to 2006.
Yeah. He was. I think that's right because he went to Megadeth after that, right? He was in Megadeth after David Lee Roth, if I remember correctly.
06, 07, somewhere down there. So I think personally, now granted, it's the first times I got to see Dave live, but I saw him, I think 4 or 5 times between 04, 05, 06. I think that that's kind of the last amazing backing band he had of all-star players. You were talking about how great Ray is. I agree. I think Brian Young is as good as anybody he's played with. Am I out of my mind, or is that one of the best bands he had?
The Eat 'Em and Smile band was the best band he ever had. I mean, Sheehan and Vi and Greg Bissonette. That's probably the best band he had. But I would say, the Sammy Roth tour was a damn good band. Damn good band. Yeah. But I don't think you compare those guys to like a Billy Sheehan and, Steve I mean, that's just Greg Bissonette. I mean, those guys are just, they're at the top of their game. So
fair point right there. So you said that you saw Van Halen on the 07 and the 12 tour as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. I saw all 3 tours when Dave was back. They had 3.
Because they did 07 and then they did smaller markets in 08. Was that?
They did 07. They did 07. They did 12, and they did 15.
I can't believe I just forgot that. You're right. The last shows were in 15. The Hollywood Bowl was the last thing because A Different Kind of Truth was 12.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Different Kind of Truth, one of the greatest reunion albums ever, would you say?
So this is funny, and I know I'm not the only one, but Different Kind of Truth was a great album, but I'd heard it before because they're all demos, and I've got stacks and stacks and stacks of bootlegs.
Okay.
So I've heard She's the Woman. But it was a great album. I mean, that's a great comeback album for people who aren't Van Halen fanatics. And you like Van Halen. If you didn't like that album, then you really didn't like Van Halen because it brought back sort of that Van Halen sound again, even though Eddie's tone was a little different, but it brought back the sound. And, Roth sounded really good in the studio. They made his voice sound good, live, not so good, but I don't think it matters. When talking, like I said, when I would do interviews about our band and we'd always kind of tail off on this. It's like, if you're looking for a perfect voice, there aren't many who can sing live perfectly.
Right.
There are people who do, but it's more of a personality. The fact that, and I remember in 07 when the curtain dropped in Charlotte, and that was the first show they played in 07. The reunion started in Charlotte. I was there at the very first one. It didn't matter if Dave could sing. The fact that he's standing right there beside Edward Van Halen was just a monster moment. 25 years those guys were in the press that couldn't stand each other. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. But, I mean, I'm sure there was differences, but the fact that they were standing on stage, so it didn't matter if Dave could sing all the notes or Dave didn't sing all the words. I mean, he never did. And it always used to. It still pisses me off to this day that people are like, oh my God, he forgot the words. Most people don't understand that's kind of a gimmick. They believe it, and it's a gimmick, and
kind of a gimmick. It is a gimmick because
of course it is. Yeah.
Look at all the people here tonight. I forgot the fucking words.
Right. Hey, buddy, don't stick your tongue out at me or I'll fuck your girlfriend. That was one that he did. I mean, Oh, and the other one, it's so funny because I just started working out again, and so what I do is I take my iPad and I try to find a live show, and I brought back up the old Baltimore show in '82, Largo, Maryland, not Baltimore, Largo, one of the greatest shows.
Yeah.
And, he did the, what was the bit he did? Oh, you know what? You guys are so rowdy. We don't have to play another show in the United States. You're the rowdiest crowd ever. And people, it's great. I mean, but that's what a front man does.
Yeah.
And there aren't many that are that good at it. People can say there are. They're not. I mean, I can name a few, but Dave is the top-notch front man, but you got to throw / showmanship there. There's nobody. There was probably the only guy that might have been better than was Jim Dandy, because that's where he got it from.
Yes, I'm working to try and get a Jim Dandy interview for this podcast. I didn't even know. I got we'll forward this to Jim and we'll see. A lot of people have been critical about that one, but the list of things that Dave said at every show, wouldn't you put up there we're recording this for a live album tonight, or is it you're going to be on TV tonight?
Yeah. But I just remember the first time I heard him say, where he looked at the guy, and I brought it up. He's like, look at the guy. And he goes, or said something. He says, "Hey, don't stick." And I said, "Don't stick your tongue at me. I'm gonna fuck your girlfriend." I was like, "Oh man, this guy's the greatest." And then the next tour came. He said the same thing. I was like, "Wait a minute.
Yeah,
I think I've heard that before." But people don't get it. They don't get it, and it's so now it becomes, well, I don't really understand what Ross doing, so now I'm going to be critical. He can't sing. He doesn't remember the words. It becomes critical.
Yeah.
You're like, then you don't understand a Van Halen show.
Yeah. When my wife and I went to see 2 of the Vegas shows last January, one of the reviews was, "And he doesn't remember the words." And it's like, you idiot.
Right. It's so stupid. Go do your research. It's crazy.
Exactly. Well, I got 2 more questions for you because you've been so generous with your time, and they're about you and Red Rain. And the first one is, you guys recently had a song featured on I can't even talk, All Elite Wrestling, AEW, on Dark. How did that happen? Now, granted, hard rock and wrestling have their many, many overlaps, but in your case, was it one of the wrestlers was a fan of Red Rain?
No, it's a funny story. There's a gentleman here in Richmond, a gentleman named Mikey Ruckus. Mikey is the music director for AEW.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yep. And Mikey actually just put out his own album. And great. I don't know him as well as Stevie, our guitar player, knows him. But Mikey, we've talked a little bit. Super nice guy. I'm so excited for him. He's got his new album out. I hope he kills it. It's great. But he reached out to us and said, "Hey, would you guys like to be featured on AEW?" We're like, "Hell yeah." That's great. And any promotion's good promotion. So we got very lucky. And so that's how the song ended there. And they played the title track called Red Rain.
Got it. And which wrestler was that the entrance for? Do you remember?
Matt Hart.
That's the Matt Hardy entrance song, you guys?
I believe that was it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Really,
I should know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
If it's Matt Hardy, that is one of the top wrestlers of the last 25 years.
It was not Matt Hardy, then that's not it. It was I don't remember. It was not Matt Hardy. It was not Matt Hardy.
I'll look it up. We'll put it in
because Matt Hardy's part of the Hardy Boys, right?
Yes.
Yeah, then it's not him. It was somebody else. I think it was like Hart, or I don't know. I should know that. I'm very sorry. I don't.
No problem. Wrestling is not for everybody.
Well, I love the old. I have not really. I'll be honest, and it's sad. I don't really watch wrestling anymore. I used to love it. I mean, I was a Four Horsemen fan, and Flair, obviously Flair. I'm now, now that I'm not saying I'm older and it's different. I love wrestling and ever I can watch it. But now I'm married and have a daughter, and so when I get home, it's more about them and my wife and my daughter, and so I don't always get to watch what I want to watch. So I have to pick and choose. But
well, clearly,
no, it was
Roth was also a Four Horsemen fan because there's a little bit of Ric Flair in him.
Oh, there's a lot of absolutely. But it was a great honor. It really was, and AEW was gracious to allow us to do that, and Mikey really was gracious enough to ask, and so we couldn't be more thankful to both of those entities. So it's good.
And then the last question: should be the easiest. Where do we go online to find more information about you, your various endeavors, and Red Rain?
I don't have the answer to that. I'm kidding. So we're Red Rain, and it's REDREIGN.
Yes.
So Red Rain. You can look up Red Rain Band. That's we've sort of threw up a new website. We're still in the building process, but you can see it. We're on Facebook, Red Rain Band. The music is on iTunes, on every downloadable site, iTunes, Spotify. We are Google Music, Apple, everything. So that's really a good way. So if you look up Red Rain, there's videos out there. We had a music video we put out 2 years ago with the title track. We're getting ready to, we've been, real quick to kind of give us some plugs, shameless plugs about the band. But we've been on and off tour with Tesla for the last 3 years. We have played with some of the other bands. So you can kind of find, we played with Dokken, we've played with Lita Ford, Quiet Riot, Y&T, by the way, Y&T, one of my favorite bands.
Oh yeah.
And here's a little unknown or known fact for a lot of people, and I think they may know this, but Y&T, Dave Manichetti, was when David Lee Roth left, they tried to get Dave Manichetti in the band.
That I've never heard before. You hear about Patty Smythe, you hear about Mitch Malloy for the third rung, that he was supposed to be the guy before Sharon, but I've never heard that Manichetti was considered for it.
There was a story that Eddie reached out to Dave Manichetti. Whether it's true or not, that I don't know. And I met him, but I don't want to bring that up. But I did hear that. And then so we opened up with him, and that was great. So we're touring a lot of those other bands. And then here's my last story for you. And then if you want me off, I'll get off.
Thanks.
We opened for Extreme last year.
Everyone loves Extreme. I mean, let's face it.
So here's my story for that. And I'll leave you on this story.
Sure.
David Lee Roth fan, obviously. Didn't like Van Hagar. Hated Van Halen 3. Okay? Did not like... I was never really an Extreme fan. Did not like Gary Sharon. So we get to the venue. We got our time call. I go upstairs. And there's another show, and I hope you don't mind if I mention this, because these guys were really very instrumental in getting Red Rain to where we are. But it's a show called the Classic Metal Show.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Neely and Chris Aiken, they're really good friends of mine. But I talked to Neely a lot. I don't talk to Chris as much, but I've been talking to Chris, and I said, hey, you won't believe it, because they know me very well and they said you won't believe who we're opening for, this gig we got. And I told him, and so Chris says, you're going to love Gary Sharon. I'm like, I don't know. I got this, again, I got this thing in my head. Well, I met him, and again, this makes me look like an asshole. He was the sweetest, most genuine guy I ever met. And I told myself I wasn't going to talk about Van Halen, but I did. And he answered every question. And he really, very generously, but didn't mean to. Wasn't like, hey, this, because I told him I was a Raw fan. I was very honest. And the first thing he said was, well, so am I. I had to pick. But the one thing he said to me was, Sam, he says, I knew people didn't like me, and I knew I was stepping into a whirlwind. He said, but here's the funny thing. Think about this. You're a singer, and Eddie Van Halen calls you and says, I want you to sing in my band. Are you going to say no? And you're going to get a backlash. He said, but I stood on stage with arguably the greatest guitar player to ever pick the instrument up. What would you have done? And I said, and so that's another story I had, but he was so great. And him and I spoke for like 45 minutes. He just sat there and we spoke. So that tells you, so I'm, you play that 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I'm 1 degree away from David Lee Roth, damn it. And I got, when I meet him, that'll be it.
Hopefully you don't step on him the next time.
I try not to. But this has been fun. And I really appreciate you letting me, obviously talk about my passion as well, which is Van Halen, David Lee Roth, and let me talk about my band a little bit. So
my pleasure. looking forward to getting this out, and keep me posted on all ends about what's coming up for Red Rain. Hope to eventually see you guys live, because you guys gig with so many bands I do listen to regularly. So got to see you eventually.
What location are you in, real quick?
New York, Long Island.
Okay, so you're up in New York. Okay. Closest we've gotten up there is Pittsburgh.
Never say never.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and I will keep you informed of things that we're doing if we come up that way. And thank you again. This has been great.
My pleasure, Sammy. Have a great rest of the day.
You too. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.